as he was getting his fingers fixed for the next big chord. Down, 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 down. Big pause, body. And she would come running in. Tammy, what are you doing? Why aren't you practicing this? You know, the idea is you start with the scales and you learn all the scales and all of that, and then you get maybe to a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Tevin skipped all that. He was waiting for the big stuff. Chopin. Very unorthodox. But that was Tevin.
I decided to come to New York to be closer to the culture, the arts, and the music. And I transferred to Wake-Paterson College in New Jersey. And while I was attending Wake-Paterson College, in my last year I was performing at the Atlantic City Casino. Education and music has been the highest expression of my life. It's been an incredible experience to be a teacher in the New York City school system. While I was teaching, I was also performing with international iconic recording artists and performers at the same time. First really big professional artist that I performed with was Bobby Humphrey, who had a hit record about Harlem River Drive. Soon after that, I met Felicia Collins, who was the guitarist for The Late Show. She invited me to perform with Babyface. We did several shows on television. And I was director of the Apollo Theater for the radio station WLID with Mark Riley and Gary Bird. And Gary Bird had all the top guests in the African American community. Denardo Coleman was a fan of this show. He came to the Apollo. We became friends, and eventually he invited me to record with him. And then he invited me to perform with his father, Ornette Coleman.
See, the thing about Tevin is that he is like a Zen kind of warrior guy, because he's in his own space, in his own time. Because like the fact that me and Ryan had a lot of success in that, we had all the gigs, that didn't deter him. You know, he was getting other gigs. Like he told me, oh, I hit a Babyface yesterday. I was like, you did what? Like what? You know, he's playing with Ornette Coleman. All these years I've been a fan, but I never got a chance to actually play with Ornette. He always had a way of connecting to what he needed to connect to in his own way. All John, you know the Tevin. What was it?
No, that's not it. I'm sorry. That's the first one. So these two notes, there's two notes. Just these two notes. Got it?
I met all of these musicians when I was like a baby, 17, 18. New York City was booming at the time, musicians. And Tevin was always like a mystical, quiet musician that didn't have much until he got on the keys, and then it was over. I love my talent, and I've always respected and loved his. Each other grow, and we performed with each other over the years. And we really solidified our relationship when we worked for Ornette Coleman. And I composed a song, and Tevin put the keys to it, game over.
about the screen. You talk about the music, you just, about screen. Music is based on the sounds that you hear in your environment. Crying and screaming all the time. You know, you hear this, you know, the kind of violence that goes on in our community, the violence. I'm expressing that, and that's translated into different stuff, but it's all just crying and screaming. It's the same thing that Duke Ellington is doing, it's the same thing Muddy Waters does, and even the rock and rollers, they're all trying to scream the way we scream. In a sense, I feel like black people in America taught the world to scream and how to heal yourself from the scream, because the scream is it's not about being blue, it's about healing from being blue. So when I'm screaming, I'm actually healing. And I'm just projecting a healing energy, whatever the context. If I play this chord, if I got this chord, man, or if I think, or if it's, you know, I'm still crying, and I'm still expressing myself no matter what the form, but it's that note, that crying, like you said, note, in between that bent note that's going in between tone pitch, that's the sound of our passion, and we're healing ourselves. You scream, you burning out. The hours releasing the pain. Releasing the pain, I'm out to heal. I'm crying and healing.
To blow over the bridge, we'll have one of each. Yeah, you got it. You're a little in front of it. DJ, don't worry, the vocals getting perfect. We have a bunch of vocal units at the same time, but it's always six. Not a problem. Here we go, same spot.
So Kevin and I moved in similar circles. I was doing black theater, so places like National Black Theater, New Heritage Theater, events at Aaron Davis Hall and Apollo. And I would see Kevin. Kevin was the musical director for the Gary Bird Show. He played with different groups around town, so, you know, really respected what he was doing as a musician, the kind of projects that he was doing, you know, reflected his sensibility.
It's not a game. It's not a game. It's not a game.
In 1997, we started a youth program in Harlem called Impact. So I asked Kevin to become the musical director because I knew from Kevin's work as an artist, but also his work in the community, his work as an educator. You know, you see him at the rallies, you see him at these events. He was a Harlemite, loved the community, that he would be the right person, not just because of his musical skills, but because of his spirit and his compassion, and that young people could relate to him.
10 times, I remember when I came to Impact, he brought a lot of the young people. At that time, I was one of the young people as far as writing and pushing us to do and try different things, you know, helping us to create ourselves. We would sit down and just start having a conversation, vibing and writing words about what's going on around you, and tell what make you think. You know, keeping in the community, remembering where we came from, speaking through the music with your heart.
I had been an educator and a music teacher, and the program at Impact Repertory Theater uplifts education and create music together, and there's music lessons, and different great artists come in to work with the students, and it was a culmination of all that education and music and creation together.
And 2 years later, a friend named Jim Hart was a co-writer on a film called August Rush. It's a music-driven film about a kid in an orphanage who runs away to find his parents. And if he follows the music, he knows that he'll find his parents. And along the way, he winds up coming to a church in Harlem, and he sees a choir singing. And the choir is played by Impact Repertory Theater. And the song that they sang is an original composition called Raise It Up, composed by Tevin Thomas and co-composed by Charles Mack and myself. So when you hear those keys, those first notes of the song, and haunting notes that go do 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 do. Those notes are Tevin, and we were in session writing a song about what it is to come from a broken home and what it means to create fame.
No father figure in the house, and I'm wondering how I'm gonna work it out. Oh,
Seems to be nothing left for me. Mama's gone, daddy didn't want to be. And now I'm all by myself, wondering where is love, or should I just give up, you know?
And those notes made all of us just inspired to kind of look up and just go like, that's the feel and the vibe of that song. Well, that song wound up being nominated for an Academy Award. And we were able to take 30 young people from Harlem to perform on stage in Los Angeles at the Kodak Theater at the 2008 Oscar ceremonies.
One day I was teaching at school at 811X, and for some reason I had my cell phone with me, and Jamal Carr said, Tevin, we just been nominated for Academy Award. I said, really? Really? I didn't have any ideas or plans or any knowledge of any. When I agreed to write this, you know, I signed a contract to be a part of the film. I didn't know anything about that possibility.
You know, it's happened. We were the Cinderella story, you know, Harlem, you know, and being there with Tevin, being able to say we helped create this song together as a group of us, being able to bring those young people and have them perform on stage with us, it was just a dream come true for me.
The come back from LA, and 4 days later, we're performing at a homeless shelter in Brooklyn. And the young people gave an even more dynamic performance. Of course, Tevin Thomas on keyboard, being our musical director.
The thing about Tevin's music is kind of like a kind of social work. A lot of musicians don't like to think of it like that. I'm an artist. My music is my music. You have to be worthy to understand my music. My music is up here, I'm up here, you're somewhere distant. When you think of music as social work, I'm doing it to you. I'm doing it for you to try to help you heal. I'm just like you feed people a meal. It's the communal thing. That seemed to be part of his idea of music making, not an art that's up here, but something that's, I don't know, somewhere down here where we are.
Hold on, let me see if I can hit that note. Just hit it hard, just have it. This project, when Tevin called me, I was like, wow. Like when you see the sunrise or the sunset, wow. And when I came today and saw all my old footsteps, and I'm talking about the brothers here, you know, the musicians here, and they were so happy to see me again. I'm touched. And then to see grandfather Mike standing before me and the windscreen, the door closing, you know, I'm back in the studio again. It's heaven for me, pure heaven. And I'm so happy that Tevin remembered me after all these years.
DK and I, we have a connection from many years ago when we were performing together. And she just has the innate ability to absorb information and sing a song with a full feeling as if she's known it and rehearsed it for long, but she just puts her whole heart into the song. And it's the same with the musicians. Like we start a groove and then they feel it, and then we all lock into the groove.
Yeah, we were on the kind of track, and then when we did this, you were right, you were there, but then it goes back to a thing. So it needs to go back to the thing with you. First bridge A, B, C. Is that what you're saying? A, B, C? Okay, start changing the name. So let's stay right there for 8 or 16, 16 longer, right? And then we go back to the B, A, B, C. Then she's vocal right there, then with A, B, C, a little A, kind of. After A, B, C, A, group. And take out from that A. Yeah, that sounds correct. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. You got many, so it's 8, so A with A, boom, to the B, boom, the C, and then we got A all the way out. I like these guys, man, they come from my world. I used to have gigs, I remember 40 tunes in one night. The top 40 man, we had $100 one night. Yeah, they know my soul.
People that you've known for a long time, like, even if we don't play this, like people that say, like, I've known for 40 years. Say we haven't played together for the last 20 years, I haven't seen it. When we get together, it's like we've been playing every day for the last 40 years, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not like, well, we lost some time by not being together. That space is still there. Because when you're playing from your heart, you're bringing your life's experience together. It's like we've never parted. And Kevin didn't have to say much. But let's do this. And it was like, why you want to do it? And you know what? We all knew what our jobs were, and we went right to it. It was magical. That's the simplest way I can put it. It's magical because we can all feel each other without thinking. It's the thing that I like to talk about in music all the time is that musicians read minds. We read each other's minds when we play music. You know, as a teacher, I always teach my students, they say, what do you want? You want me to read his mind? I say, yes. Feel where he's going to go and anticipate where he's going to go. Just feel it.
All right. Skip through your mouth. Okay, we should go for it, go for it, go for it. Let's go for it, go for it, go for it.
Tevin's been steady on his gig. He's never given up. He's always on it. When he's talking to you, he's on it. You know, sometimes I can see his hands moving like that. When he's talking to you, his fingers are gone. And that's one thing, like he's never given up, never.
Okay, if you want a straight answer, it's weird. And you say, Kevin, when we going to the store? He'll be like, you gotta figure it out. And we're walking or something, right? Or you say, tell me, how many bars you want in this section? I don't know. We'll figure it out. But the beauty of that is that he's open, you know, and so we can morph and develop things as we go along. It's not always having a set thing, and you know, the thing about life is not set.
The music was borderless, didn't it? Borderless and at the same time boundless. You could mix forms, and the possibilities unlimited in terms of what you could do. That the music could soar as high and as wide as you could envision it to be. You would travel across musical forms, you would time travel because you would hear something that was more R&B influence or more traditional influence than something that was straight ahead. And I think it reflects his ongoing curiosity about the world and about life.
You think about the guy that worked with Duke Ellington that wrote Lush Life, right? When you think about Duke Ellington, a lot of the songs were written. Yeah, you know what I mean? And that's what Tavin is. Tavin is the other cat, like, yo, his compositions are setting the standard.
I was not really just a jazz musician. I was really always into pop music and playing keyboard and soul music and a variety of things, and I appreciated classical music. I would say that I stuck with it. That's it. There's people that came to New York with higher talent and higher skills, but they moved back to wherever they're from. As a musician, I just didn't give up. I just kept going. Even if things were not working out, I just stayed in the music. You know, look at the stars and connect with your ancestors and just have good vibes with your people, with everybody. We're all people. We should all connect and have good vibes. So I think you'll get good vibes from the music because it's coming in all kinds of different directions and colors. But it's all the same. It's just powerful.
Last question. What's one thing we should know about Teddy's now?
He doesn't quit. That's definitely true. He keeps on keeping on.
fairy tale in my life. So my family has been in hardware now in our 5th generation. It's a magical community. It's a complicated community. Some of them have well-known names. Some of the names are not that well-known, but they are magical people. And there is no community in this world that matches the magic of Harlem. I was not born in America. I was born in Jamaica. And I came to Harlem when I was 3 years old. In the main, it was a Caribbean neighborhood. And so my culture from Jamaica was around us all the time. It was just a great place to grow up in. Malcolm X was my godfather. My mentor was Percy Sutton, Honorable Percy Ellis Sutton, and there was a tutor who would come in, and his name was Mr. Hughes, and he would teach me this and teach me that. It wasn't until many years later, when I was in junior high school, that I understood that Mr. Hughes was Langston Hughes, and that he was famous. To me, he was just Mr. Hughes. But the most important person was my grandmother. And my grandmother always encouraged me to think, to write, to listen. The key thing that my grandmother taught me to listen. My grandmother was an activist on 125th Street. When I was a little child coming up, Black people could not get jobs in most of the stores. They could, if they went in as a customer, they might not be allowed to try on anything because they did not want the hat or the dress or the coat to be contaminated by the African hue that may come out. And that's exactly what was happening. Mr. Sutton was very active in the NAACP. And so one day, I went to meet Malcolm, and who was there, Percy Sutton. And Malcolm introduced me to him as his godson. And we formed this relationship and this bond. And what I found out from those discussions is that it was far more important to be wrong than to be right. If you are wrong and your mind is open and you're not stuck with your ego, if you are wrong, then you can learn. There's not a day that I do not remember something Malcolm taught me, Percy Sutton taught me, and my grandmother. Every day. Education was important. At Syracuse, I majored in journalism. And in Stanford, I majored in business. Every year that I was in college, I came home to Harlem for the summer and was active in civil rights. What was important to me is to come back to my community. Percy Sutton got me a job as junior officer at the City Bank. From that point out, I went to work with the government, with Mayor Lindsay, and Holmes Stevens saw me when I was a young man at City Court and invited me to work with him. He was the first Black president of the Uptown Chamber of Commerce, that then years later became the Chamber of Commerce. And my view on who touched the Uptown Chamber of Commerce with a 10-foot pole. Wherever I was demonstrating, it was against a business that was a part of the Uptown Chamber of Commerce. So I said no to Mr. Stevens. So Vassal came to speak to me about this. And I said, but Mr. Patterson, you know, it's not what I want to do. And what he said to me is, okay, Lloyd, just do one thing. Go to Columbia University Library and look up the Uptown Chamber of Commerce and see what it did and what it was. And I went and studied, and I was mesmerized. The Uptown Chamber of Commerce was the sponsor of the George Washington Bridge. The Uptown Chamber of Commerce sponsored the first subway lines coming up into Harlem. The Uptown Chamber of Commerce sponsored the building of the Triborough Bridge, and on and on and on. And when I looked at that, I understood what it might be. And so I took another tack. And while I was still working with the bank and then with the government, I headed up their program committee, their community committee, kept going up and up and up and up with the Chamber of Commerce. And then when Stevens left the presidency, and then years later, my icon, Percy Sutton, became chairman of the board, etc. And he grew me to succeed him as head of the chamber. There are so many of us, unfortunately, who are of color, who get these positions and do not understand what our responsibility is when we have these positions. And so they start thinking that their name is Chase and that their name is Con Ed. But when you're not at Chase, who are you then? And when you're not at Con Ed, who are you then? And if, when you are at Chase or Con Ed, if you can be helpful to some people along the way, there's always going to be people helping out. And I was speaking to Mr. Sutton, and he told me something seared in my mind, and I tried to pass it on. And he said, Lloyd, the foundation is the word common. And we, as people of color, need to understand what we have in common. And if we find out what we have in common, we will become communal. And if we become communal, we will communicate. And if we know what we have in common, and we become communal, and we communicate, we will have a community. Nobody gets anywhere home. Everybody stands on somebody's shoulder. And I love to tell the story of a kid in fifth grade and in the turtle, 8, 10 feet high on a fence post. And teacher said, well, now what is it you know? What does that say to you? And the boy said, well, I know one thing. He didn't get there by himself.
I see New York as a gorgeous mosaic of race and religious faith, of natural origin and sexual orientation, whose families arrived yesterday and generations ago. In that spirit, I offer this fundamental pledge. I intend to be the mayor of all the people of New York.
Born in Trenton, New Jersey, to Sarah Sally Lucy and William Harvey Dinkins Jr., his family was no stranger to hard work. His dad was a barber and real estate agent, his mom a domestic worker. At the age of 7, he found his first hustle.
As a matter of fact, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, at 125th and 8th Avenue, at the intersection there, they had push carts from which they sold fruit and vegetables. But they wouldn't give you a shopping bag, you had to buy them. So I used to buy them 3 for a nickel and sell them 2 cents a piece. When I found together 10 cents, went and bought something for my mother, I was a private school guy.
He held odd jobs throughout high school, including working at the post office. He became one of the first Black recruits, known as the Montford Point Marine.
And I wanted to enlist in the Marine Corps because I figured, see, people you knew were dying. I mean, you can't look across the street around the corner, were dying. I mean, this is smack dab in the middle of the war. And so I figured the best way to increase my chances of survival would be well trained, which means be a Marine.
You know, he was proud that he had been a Marine. Right, and Marines are tough. That's what he used to say, you know, Marines are tough.
He was a Marine and he loved being a Marine.
He never considered college, but the GI Bill and a push from his stepmother landed him at the prestigious Howard University.
Howard was really hard in his viewpoint. It was nothing to compare the experience that he had at Howard and with his roommate Andy Young. What they had for lunch, sometime their lunch and dinner was the same thing, because that's how poor he was. And then we saw Joyce on campus, this beautiful girl coming, and of course she was kind of from a middle class family in New York, and so she sometimes would give him a crust of bread, he would say.
They were married in 1953 and moved in with his in-laws.
Oh, my God, it was like marriage in heaven, even after their 60-some years being together. You thought it was love at first sight.
You would have realized Joyce is the reason David got into New York politics. Her father, Danny Burroughs, was an assemblyman and a real power in Harlem. And he was one of the mentors for that generation of the Wrangell, Sutton, Patterson, Dinkins world.
Encouraged by Mr. Burroughs, he attended Brooklyn Law School, working nights in his liquor store until he graduated in 1956.
When I came out of law school, I went with Prince Alexander, who was the dean of black lawyers, and later I joined a law firm with Basil Patterson, Michael, Higgins, and Jones. And in fact, for offices at 2097 Avenue, and that just sounds familiar to you. It should, because it's where the hotel is. So that's where, when I got to the point where I could give up my night job, because I had the night job all through law school, and then for 2 years after that, I put on a shirt and tie, go down to the law office, but at night I went to the liquor store where I worked. When I got to the point where I could go to the liquor store, I joined a political club. I had no interest in seeking public office until one day Ray Jones, first black head of Tammany Hall, one day he said to me, "Boy, you want to run for the assembly?" I said, "Oh no." That's how it started. But once I had the 1 year 4-year term. And then the next year I was a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. And after that, I was hopelessly hooked on public service.
And it was clear that Ray Jones, that he was Ray Jones' spearhead successor. And of course, Ray Jones had some obligations to me. He buried the hatchet with Percy Sutton. Basil Patterson was a leader in the NAACP. We enjoyed each other so much. And really, we were a gang of 4 people who had our own paths and no obligations to any organizations that worked so well together and had no conflict. And out of that was the gentleman of the whole group, David Dickens.
So I ran for borough president. In fact, I ran 3 times before I succeeded. And people used to say to me, "What do you do?" I said, "I run for president."
In his 10 years of service, his favorite part was presiding over the city's marriage bureau. When due to stigma, no clerk wanted to marry a hospitalized man with AIDS. He chose to perform the ceremony himself.
Of course, Koch in those days was a liberal, progressive member of city council and of the Congress. It wasn't until his 3rd term that we felt he moved more and more to the right, and we needed somebody to run against him. And it happened to be my lot.
Dickens, the incumbent mayor of Koch, incumbent controller Jay Golden, who was a smart guy, and Dick Ravitch, a very successful and a business person and a real intellectual power in the Democratic Party. The 4 of them ran against each other for the Democratic primary for mayor in 1989.
And the conventional wisdom was that we wouldn't win, because even if I finished first, there was no way was I going to get 40% with 4 of us running. And then in a runoff, because each of the others was Jewish, they'd gang up on me and I would lose. Well, we got 51%.
And then we took on the Republican, Rudolph Giuliani. Electing the first black mayor of New York seems like some historic thing now. It was a big deal. And it was a big deal to get white people to vote for a black person. Simple as that. You need to get the more moderate and certainly liberal Jews and other white New Yorkers to feel very comfortable about voting for David Dickens. Well, we did it. We did it largely because David Dickens was a masterful politician.
Publicly, he was courteous and charming, a polished gentleman. This was tempered by his private irritability, curtness, anger, and a wicked sense of humor.
One of the things about Mayor Dickens that people mistake, because he was very genteel and he was polite, way more polite than most people are in this era, and he had a kind way. They thought he wasn't tough. He was one tough son of a bitch.
But he had the ability to control it in circumstances that, quite frankly, I would get more annoyed than he. I had a list of people who didn't support him for mayor, who didn't support him for borough president. But he didn't have the list. I had the list. And he used to really annoy me how quickly he would forget people who would not be trustworthy.
He always stayed calm and highlighted tension when I know that he should have jumped up and slapped people or gave them a hard punch. He kept his demeanor as a professional, calm, cool, and polite. And that took a lot of inner strength that showed the human that he was.
It's very interesting talking about his dignified way. Part of it was a generation. African-American men of a certain generation, I think were trying very hard to be formal in their way of presenting themselves to an often very hostile world. And I mean, I'm simplifying, apply to everybody and all, but he was really formal in the way he dressed, in the way he conducted himself, in his use of language. He was very precise in his use of language. And it was him. Believe me, it was not put on.
In his time, Dinkins never got true credit for all of his accomplishments as mayor.
Crime was a big problem in New York in the 80s. And it was out of control. And you elect the first black mayor, a skeptical white press is going to say, oh, this guy is going to not be as sensitive to the crime issue. Totally the reverse.
Dinkins appointed Lee Brown, who was an African-American police commissioner, who did a great job in strengthening the relationship between all the communities, and especially the African-Americans community.
You got monies in Albany that were specifically designed to combat crime, and Giuliani gets all the credit for crime going down in New York. Started in Dinkins. That is a major accomplishment.
I did that program, Safe Street, Safe City. It came under me as president of New York's Dog Track Committee. And this was a safe city under Dinkins' administration. He did great work. He had bigger schools for our children. He, as I said, he cared about children, he cared about education, he cared about seniors. He talked about the vulnerable people.
I couldn't pinpoint any one thing that we did singularly, but I think that the bright light of the Apollo coming back in 2015 with the empowerment zone, with Dinkins being the mayor, with Percy being this spearhead on the Apollo and so many other things. With Basil paving the way to Albany, wherever he went. And even as deputy mayor, it's not so much really what you do when you're in office, but how many times in a particular period that you were in office. And as David would say, we had a real mosaic of people and themes and ideas that would just fit in whenever the opportunity would come.
He was a hard worker. You could find Mayor Dinkins in his office at 6 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock at night. But once in a while, he would put on his tennis clothes and go and play tennis. And so they made a big thing out of that. There was, he didn't take vacations. He didn't have a private plane that he could fly to Bermuda, where he had a home in Bermuda, one in Hawaii. He didn't have that. But even the kind of luxury that he liked, the playing tennis, they made a big deal, front page story.
He loved tennis, and in building that stadium that we have here in the Arthur Ashe Stadium, a tennis stadium, that brings in more revenue than all of the sport events in the city of New York. And he was able to do it with strong opposition from Giuliani. But yes, he loved tennis, and tennis loved him.
When we went with Mayor Dinkins to the presidential box, this is not like liberal Democratic presidential box. This is the US Open. So this is green pants and bow ties and let's just say a lot of it wasn't my crowd, but it was his crowd. He loved that world. So I would care about it. You don't get any votes in this box, Mr. Mayor. He said, shut up. He said, this is, you got your thing, this is my thing.
Mandela, at that time his wife was Winnie Mandela, and they black and white, showed so much love for the city and for a man who had endured so much. And what Mandela meant to David, to the mayor, to show the strength that these men had above adversity in their lives and what people tried to do to them.
First place to which he came upon release from prison outside of Africa was to New York. And I owe it to Bill Lynch that he just would not quit, and we got him here. And one of my favorite photographs, and it's probably around here somewhere, it's got Madiba, there it is right there. Madiba holding our granddaughter. Oh, he was a remarkable man. Oh, God. When they asked me, and I'm sure you probably are asked this, with whom would you most like to have dinner? Who would you most like to meet? Living or dead, people of the past. I always, it was a very easy choice for me. Nelson Mandela.
There was an incident that had happened in Brooklyn. That was before the Cato, running over the child, before that riot happened. There was another incident that happened in Brooklyn. And as you know, Julianne brought the cops to storm City Hall when Mr. Dickens was mayor. He said that Dickens didn't back up the police department. And so he had the police rally of the PDA group against the mayor. They came, they had to go, and they stormed City Hall. They were on top of cars, just ugly. Kind of for a city of a man who was always looking to bring the community together.
The Crown Heights riots were a defining moment in his career. In the spirit of the mosaic, he attempted healing and reconciliation for both the Black and Jewish communities, but neither side thought he went far enough or responded fast enough to appease them. Many believe it's what cost him the re-election.
We were devastated. We lost the election because he had given so much to this city, and there was so much more for him to do. But he took it like a champ. He never showed any anger against the city, against those who voted against him. He treated Julianne with courtesy. He made sure the transition was smooth for Julianne. And so we were just heart-stricken that we had a gentleman, a man who loved the city, to be defeated. One, because of racism, and two, because of what you're seeing today of the Trumpism. That's what Julianne had always been.
When he was first defeated by Giuliani, the press was still pretty ugly toward him, and it was not as much warmth about him. But as time went on, and Dinkins was a very public person and a dignified person, the image of Dinkins changed. And I think there was much greater respect for Dinkins and his administration. And I'm very grateful for that. Those of us, close loyalists and family, are gratified that the Dinkins place in history is a respected one, more and more, and a pioneering one. I mean, to be blunt, being the first Black mayor of New York was a big deal. To quote Reverend Sharpton, without David Dinkins, there would have been no Barack Obama.
Well, I think that his speech made it clear that mayors come and go, but the city goes so forward. He loved this town. He loved flying in, looking at the lights sparkling like diamonds. He was so for his people and the that we've had. And honestly, he thought that the honor that he had to represent all of these dreams, especially for people of African descent, and to bring them together, that just serving and not winning the second term, but just serving was the height of his lifetime ambition. And so while I would never really know the personal feeling that he had with his loss, you would never know it if you were doing it. He loved the city more than he loved himself.
But one day there'll be another black, and there'll be a woman. No matter woman who's made. See, but we not just blacks, but society generally is illogical. I mean, if you think that women couldn't even vote until around 1920, that's just plain stupid. And my undergraduate degree is in mathematics, and I'm a lawyer, and always at the top of the class for women.
There was so much more to David Dinkins than the title of first Black mayor. He was a husband, a father, a powerhouse, a legacy. He is part of Harlem's legacy, New York City's legacy, our legacy.
For the children of this city are voices of hope, singing out the sweet songs of the future amidst the discord of daily life. They sing in Spanish and English, Russian and Italian, Korean and Creole, all the dozens of languages we speak in our town. The spirit of their youth says to each of us, follow your hopes and not your fears. And to them, and to each of you, I make this promise. The same one I made when I entered the United States Marine Corps, Semper Fidelis, always faithful. Thank you. God bless you. Keep the faith.
What do you think about David? He was so fun. People thought because he was formal and somewhat dignified in his manner that he wasn't funny.
Dave had a real great sense of humor, albeit with dry humor.
He could tell some jokes wasn't even funny. But if we made it, you ever heard him tell a story about he was riding in a limousine with Mrs. Dickens?
My bride and I are riding along in the city limousine when I was mayor. This is the days when the mayor used big, long vehicles. And
There was some fellow out there that was repairing a ditch that was adjacent to the mansion.
And she saw the man shoveling the gravel or the dirt, and he looked out the window and he said, "See, Joyce,
Isn't that fella digging the ditch? Isn't he somebody that you used to date?" And he said, Joyce looked over and said, "Yes, that is something I used to date."
I can see if he married in, he'd be wife of this digger. You know, married in, he'd be there.
Hi, everyone. Just take a moment, why don't you get up and stretch while we get set up, and we'll start in a moment.
In the middle. We're gonna have a little conversation, talk back in the audience, and conversation with other leaders. You got the relevant building community and follow now the game of as a filmmaker, is Ryan still here? Yeah. Ryan Allison who's been DP on the as I was looking at those, I was reflecting, how many of the people, not only who were subject to the films or who in the films, are ancestors now. And I just want to say Ashe, but, I want to thank Rosa. We, co-founded New Heritage Films together. And when I first, came to Rosa, I think people know my story, joining the Black Panther Party when I was 15 years old, and at 16, being arrested as one of the, and again, this number of New York Panther 21. Same case as Sister Faith Shakur famously defended herself. While I was in Leavenworth Federal Prison, took college courses and earned degrees from the University of Kansas and started writing and formed a theater company. And I thought to myself as I was doing that, and Gil Scott Heron had a great record, Revolution would not be televised, I remember that. But as we were doing these plays, I thought, well, the revolution won't be televised, but we could have it through commercials. I had the idea to continue. I want to acknowledge my friend Yusef Omawali. Brother Yusef, where are you? Stand up, Yusef. And Yusef is also a member of the Black Panther Party, as we say, Black Panther veterans. And Yusef is in town. There are a lot of movement people in town that have come in the last couple of days and coming today for the memorial of Sada Shakur tomorrow. But Yusef was very close to Chairman Fred Hampton. And the stories that he has to tell about Fred Hampton and being with Fred Hampton hours before he was assassinated, murdered by the Chicago police, and Brother Yusef being the very first person in the apartment after the shooting. He tells a story that always brings me to tears about coming back, and he was supposed to be there that night. And he tells a story that always brings me to tears, that when he heard the news, he got there and was the first person in the apartment along with a sister who was a member of the Black Panther Party. And when Yusef got there, gunpowder was still in the air, Kodak. And that famous photo of the mattress that Chairman Fred was assassinated on, blood was still literally from the apartment. And a sister from the, and
an elder came in and braved the cold, braved whatever had happened horribly just an hour or so before and asked could she come in. And Yusef and his sister took her around the apartment and started pointing out what was going on. And this is the part that brings tears to my eyes. In the community, the neighbors raised their windows. That cold Chicago morning, you know how cold it gets in the Windy City. And they put speakers in the window and they started playing music, and in particular that Temptation song, Message to the Black Man. You know that verse, no matter how hard you try, you can't stop me now. And that's how the community responded. And here's the other thing that's important to know, that after losing our most dynamic member of the Black Panther Party, and Chairman Fred Hampton, Deputy Chairman of the Black Panther Party, the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, the Black Panthers from Chicago, that's how you better call it. They're not Chicago Panthers, members of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, because that's how Fred Hampton said it, that the breakfast program went on that morning. The kids were still fed, because people know that's what Chairman Fred would have wanted. And so Brother Yusef and I were in prison together, we took college courses together, and when I had this idea of starting this theater company, I kind of persuaded this brother to be an actor. So he's a member of that, that level of ensemble, kind of where this journey began, using arts and activism to try to tell these stories. And so when Boza Rivers, when I got out of prison, Boza was the first producer to embrace me, to produce my plays, to encourage everything that I was doing. And then Boza invited me to become artistic director of the theater. And I asked him two things. I said, I honored, I know the history and tradition of New Heritage. I said, but could we do something? I said, no, but I need your support. I want to start a youth program in Harlem. I had been volunteering at a place called City Kids. And, where we do arts and activism and train the young people, and it'd be a free program. And I'll try to raise some money, and could New Heritage be a fiscal good for the program? And for the first time and only time in the 40 years that I've known Rosa, he told me no. He said, no, New Heritage will not be a fiscal conduit for this program. This needs to be a New Heritage program. And so the young people that you saw in the couple of films, Impact Repertory Theater, that's how Impact began. And feeling like I was on a roll, I said, well, could we also do some films? And Boza said, this is a theater, right? And he took another pause and said, tell me your ideas about that. And that led to the films that you saw tonight, close to 50 films that we've done in New Heritage Theater. So thank you, Boza. And like the theater, we do the kinds of films that we do, the documentaries. As I was sitting there, I was grateful for the opportunity, because of Boza and because of Lloyd Williams, to be able to get to know and to sit with these great icons that you see tonight. They led to friendships, they led to being able to talk about their whole life stories, and to know that they're ancestors now, and that I had the opportunity to know them, but to use my skills as a filmmaker to be in conversation with them, and have these incredible interviews that will become archived, and so that we're able to use films in the way our ancestors in Africa used the drum. It wasn't just for music, it was it was to inspire us. It was to keep these rhythms that were associated with stories that needed to be passed on. It helped us through the Middle Passage. It helped us as we were enslaved people. It helped us through, as brother was demonstrating, making the guitar talk and talking about the wailing and screaming what all of those things mean. So to be able to combine those forms, we see that music was also a theme throughout the films, and to bring those elements together, and they continue to be in that New York circle. So again, I just moved to kind of, say Ashe if you can for all of the ancestors that were in the film, Ashe, and to Zane Boza, and to open the kind of conversation in that spirit. I'm so glad, that Ade said that he said to talk because, Ade has his experiences and his stories in terms of, the folks who were in the film. So Ade, your experiences in terms of what you do and, your love of music, radio show, and, being at the chamber, what was some of your feelings, not only about the dad, but, the other people?
Well, first off, I have notes here, and everything I was gonna say, you just said it, so. Word for word. I want actually, if I can, I want to start with acknowledgements. So, shout out to my son Lennox, one for his association. He's been very patient through all of this, and also thank you for playing catch with me. Oh, right, great job setting up too. Dad would absolutely want me to thank everyone from his family and his friends and colleagues and coworkers. He was always conscious of the fact that he was high profile. Well, if you listen to him, and it didn't always, people would edit and not everything would make them on air. But he was always very conscious of the fact that there's no way he could have done the things he did by himself, and that he took the whole village. And I am super conscious of that same time with familiar faces who just been so instrumental to his success. And I also want to thank you, Jamal and Boza, not only for, you guys do so much for the community, just for tonight, I'll limit it to the films and having that history archived and keeping those names and memories and legacies alive and letting people hear from their own voices, which is so critical. Billy Mitchell's in the audience, and he always talks about Billy always talked about the importance of history, not his story. And when you're telling it yourself, that's critical. So thank you for that. As far as my connection with the films, it was actually funny. I actually had to make a couple of those for real. So I do a radio show called The Harlem Connection, and we play music from my partner and I. We play music from every era, every genre, from artists from all over the world. But every song we play, somehow there's a connection to Harlem. The artists were born at the Apollo, or they were raised in Harlem, or the songwriter, or did a piano at the Schomburg, or what have you. We use that to kind of show how we are all connected, whether you know it or not. And watching those 4 films just kind of reminded me of my Harlem connections and the way that there's this great intersection. Like I don't know Tevin Thomas, right? But in that film, one, Abadan, they showed him, the percussionist, who also was, amongst other things, one of the percussionists at Dad's memorial service. And his connection with my father and his mother, Dee, and she was friends with my aunt Grace, and that cycle. They made references to Ornette Coleman. And when I was my son's age, we referred to him, Barry, my cousin, and I referred to him as Uncle Ornette, right? Because he was super tight with my aunt Grace. And we just knew Uncle Ornette was an artist
honest and a little quirky, but super nice and always fun to be with and always made sure he gave us candy and what have you. And we just kind of took it for granted and just show my ignorance. Like I go off to college and I took a jazz history class, in part because I was interested in music, and in part the professor was Archie Shepp. I actually gone to high school with his daughter. I actually took her to the prom, right? So I'm like, oh, your dad's teaching a class? Okay, well, let me check it out, right? You know, music, and I'm in the class, and you know, I'm learning about these great jazz musicians, and I'm like, wait, hold on. I remember calling my cousin Barry and being like, hey, Barry, did you know Uncle Ornette's famous? Like, yeah, you know, didn't know. But there are just so many ways that that in the film talks about the magic of Harlem. And that's one of the things I love about the community, whether it is, you know, the wine here or the politician over here or this famous person over here. Like, it's still just all part of the village, and it all just feels so natural that you're not even sitting there going like, you're not, it doesn't seem odd that we're all in the same neighborhood all together. And then to combine the other three films, so as you mentioned, I worked at the Apollo and I was in charge of community programs, trying to do free events and activities to particularly bring Harlemites there. And I used to program something called the Apollo Uptown Hall, community conversations. So it was 20 years after South Africa had gotten their independence. And I came with the idea of let's do a Harlem, South Africa connection panel discussion. And we had Duma, and of course, first person I didn't reach out to was both. So the panels were Duma, who we saw in one of the Bozeman film, Mayor Dinkins, because of the work he did to bring Nelson Mandela here, and Harry Belafonte for all his activism against apartheid. And so I reached out to Andre Robinson, who you saw in the Bozeman film, and Andre was working for Harry Belafonte at the time and connected with Mr. Belafonte. And I'm always proud of my dad, but I never want to be the guy that's like, hey, I'm Lloyd Williams' son, like, can you do me a favor? Like, I mean, because I hadn't heard that stuff, like, that was the work Dad did, and I didn't want to be that guy. So I just reached out and I pitched to Mr. Belafonte, like, why I thought he would appreciate being a part of this. You know? I don't know what Andre had told him, but I never mentioned what was his name or my father or anyone. I just was like, hey, I think the community would really appreciate it. So at the time we would shoot for archival purposes. And Mr. Belafonte agreed to do it, except he wouldn't sign the contract related to us shooting for archival purposes. He's like, well, we talk about that when I get there, and he was just completely unorthodox for rules and everything. So at some point, we're in the dressing room and everyone's there, and Mayor Dinkins sees me and we're chatting, and he's like, why do I know you? Why do I know you? And I'm like, well, because I'm Lloyd Williams. So he's like, well, why did you say that? But it's not what. And finally, the union crew is like, look, man, are we shooting the archives or not? So I have to Mr. Belafonte's dressing room. And luckily, Mr. Dinkins was in there. I go in, and I'm like, Mr. Belafonte, like, you know, again, as we talked about, you know, we're not going to sell this. And he is giving me the business. He's giving me the hardest time. He is giving me the hardest time. And Mayor Dinkins looks at me and says, Harry, why are you giving this young man such a hard time? Look at him. Look at his face, Harry. Don't you know what that is? That's Lloyd's son. And Harry looks at me and goes, yeah, I know, but you gotta put these young boys through their paces, you know what I mean? he just winks at Mayor Jenkins. And Mayor Jenkins like, Harry, just sign this thing. And we just signed, and that was the only reason it happened. Mayor Jenkins hadn't been there. I mean, I know he was a great mayor and all, but that is my memory of Mayor Jenkins. And just how we are all connected one way or another.
Absolutely. Yes, a great story. So, Congressman Rangel, who, who's in the film, really talks about Mayor Jenkins. I've known him since I was a teenager in the Black Panther Party. And he was running against Adam Clayton Powell. And the Black Panther Party would endorse political candidates. And it was some candidates that, accepted the endorsement. We go out and actively campaign because when we were talking about revolution, changing everything, we understood that you had to fight the system on a lot of different levels. So we endorsed Charles Reagan, and he accepted the endorsement. And he's on the 125th Street campaign. And we are out passing out flyers with the Black Panther Party endorsement. His campaign slogan for that first campaign I think was Wrangler was ready. And so we had Wranglers ready, and we had the Black Panther logo, and we had it rimmed with AK-47. Mr. Wrangler looks at it, and he said, brothers, I appreciate the endorsement. I'm just wondering if there could be just a few less AK-47. That's right. Just a little, just a few less. So much work that those men did. David Jenkins, Congressman Rangel, your dad, is the reason why Harlem is what it is today. What did you learn from witnessing those kinds of struggles? And I'm going to prompt you with this because you told a great story, and you don't mind telling me at the end at your dad's memorial about, when he first showed you the house. And that's next. I repeated this story because it resonates with and I repeated it with how he saw things and they saw things. So I will tell that story, but I'm going to backtrack a tiny bit because Dad mentioned his grandmother, my great grandmother, in the film, and her name was Grace Sargent. And we were lucky because she lived to be over 100 years old, and so that was another thing that happened when I got to college. Like I took this class on the Harlem Renaissance. I realized, hey, wait a minute. Great grandma, when she was in her 20s, that would have been like the roaring 20s, and she would have been 30 during the Depression years, et cetera. Since I was fortunate enough to have her for so long, I would get to ask her things. And I remember she had moved from Harlem, but she was visiting, and we were passing by this building that had all my life just been kind of derelict. Graffiti and such. It was the hangout. Every block has that building on the corner that's never quite as kept up as like the middle of the block. And she was like, you wouldn't know it now, but you used to have big money to be in that building. I was like, that building? And she's like, yeah. I mean, I call her grandma for short, but she's great grandma. I was like, that building? She's like, yeah, no, yes. And she's like pointing out, like, yeah, there are people knocking out on the steps with their marble, and she's showing me like the intricacies of the window work and the carving, and so they kind of opened my eyes to certain possibilities
entire childhood about how Harlem could come back if we just invested in it. Having said that, there's theory and then there's reality. Like when it's your turn to deal with it, it's kind of different. So the story I told at this memorial was that we were living, and the chamber was looking for a new location. We were at 310 Lennox Avenue. The Harlem Week and chamber offices were on one side of the hallway, and when you opened the door on the other side of the hallway, WBLS and WLIB were there. And but everybody was moving, and Dad was looking for a different place. And we one day it's like, hey, come on, let's go. We're in the Bronx. It's like, let's go. And he was not the kind of guy that would be explaining what he was doing, what we were doing. And so we get to the street in Harlem, and he opens up this building and he starts taking me around. And before we even got to the building, I'm like noticing all the crack houses on the block and the abandoned buildings on the block and what have you. And he's taking me around the building, and I'm seeing like, okay, there's a puddle there, and there's dangling wires here, and that would just spark, and there's rats running around, and I mean, I was nervous being in it, because I'm like, what's gonna fall on me, or what's gonna, and he's taking me all over, and he's like, look, son, it's the original wood, and he's like super excited about it. And I'm like, okay, I get it, it's going to the WARFRAMER, like, you know, I didn't say anything, well, I'm just kind of trying to ignore him, hoping that if I don't say anything, we can get out of there, and just massacre. And he's like, son, I know you, Valerie, and I could live here. And I was like, bosses, and he was just so enthralled by the possibility that he did not notice me. And I'm like seriously calculating, and I swear, I'm not joking. Like, moments in your life that are so important that decades later you remember them so vividly. And I'm sitting there, and when I realize like he's completely serious about this, I'm like, okay, we can't move in here right away because there's too much work that needs to be done. It's gonna take us some years to get there. That means I got 1 year that I have to be here, but then I'll graduate from high school, go out to college, and as long as I can make it that 1 year, I will never step foot in this death trap again. Calculating this out, and fast forward, not only did the block completely turn around, but it still lived there. So my son and my wife and mom and dad were all living in the building to this day. He was good at seeing the possibilities, but it wasn't just the building. Like, he was consistent. Like, you look at how many tourists come up to Harlem Week. It's been 52 years, but the thought that tourists were going to be coming up here in the 70s was ludicrous, right? Dad would hire people, and many of them I loved. I was like, why are you even her the receptionist? She can't remember numbers and not know what people on the phone, right? And you get mad when she gets the messages wrong. But he would be like, yeah, you should do it. He would hire young people and be like, okay, you're going to be in charge of this. And like, it'd be their first job. But he would see that possibility. So now the guy who is the new treasurer for Harlem Week, professionally, his day job, he deals with an organization that deals with billions of dollars, like one of the top organizations in the world. He's dealing with billions of dollars on a regular basis. But he took the job of, not job like pay job, but the position of Harlem Week treasurer because the first professional job he ever had was Dad hired
to people who were co-founders of Harlem League, or people who were interns, or who lived on the block or what have you, who were very successful and said, look, I want to give back to the community. And I think that came from Dad seeing not what was in front of him, but what was the possibility, the potential. And I think to some degree, we all need to do that a little bit.
Anything you say about problems?
You would consistently say, you know, your problem is you only see the problem. Right? If they're like, yeah, I see the problem, but what else do you see? Like, your problem is you only see the problem. Yeah, he had lots of variations of it. You know, he was versatile, so there were remakes of it. That was the joke.
And from that, and for those who were there, those who were not there, our week started out as a day, right? Those who was there, that very first day, it was Harlem Day, that grew to Harlem Week, and it's now, you know, Harlem Summer, right? So, Billy, I'm gonna ask you a question, and I wanna just kind of open it up. Kevin, kind of all through the day, right? And I remember coming through on weekdays when Gary Bird was like, you know, doing the show from the Apollo, and Kevin was right there, which is how we met. Any of you come on up, just to kind of share about what the music portion of that, you know, of the film kind of brought up with you. It's a great thing to Mitchell, y'all.
Thank you, buddy. And, you know, Jamal also directed me in a play with a rapper years. He was known as Most Dead. But at that time he wasn't, but he did a play, Jamal, it's called Cigarette Man, you know. But anyway, yeah, when I saw Tevin up there, I said, oh, man, I know Tevin, because we, you know, work at the Apollo Laundry, work with help us out all the time, you know. You see all these people, they were all part of coming up in Harlem. I'm not from Harlem, but people that I admire are Percy Sutton, Rosa Rivers, Hal Jackson, and Lloyd Williams. These guys kind of like raised me, and I try to emulate them culturally wise, you know, giving back to the community and being truthful. But, you know, in those films, and I saw part of that Moses film in his office one day. It's a little snippet, but they added a lot of stuff to it, like mesmerized, right? If you really, really know about, I met Rosa Rivers from Percy Sutton in 1985. Rosa was doing business with the Apollo, did him and Katz, I bet, Japanese brother, you know. And Mr. Sutton had introduced me to Rosa. And I always liked it. Rosa's smooth, you know. I like smooth brothers, you know. I was checking out it. Yeah, I want to be like that brother. You know, Rosa's just so smooth. And over the years, you know, I've always been inspired by Rosa, what he does in the community, in the arts, because we're arts, you know, jobs, you know, part of our Apollo family as well. And when I saw Rod, his name was this cameraman, I said, yeah, okay, I get it. You know, Ade and I, that's my boy, that's my guy. You know, we were very, very close. But it's a wonderful thing when I look at all the videos and Mr. Jenkins and Basil Patterson and Charlie Rangel. Those guys were, you know, part of me. We come up, and it's just a really blessing that these documentaries are done. Like we said, we gotta pass it on down to the youngest, like Lennox, who these people were, because one day you're gonna be taken over, young man. You're gonna be running Harlem like your grandfather and your father did. And I have no doubt that he won't be very successful, because Lennox is on like pop. This kid is very, very, very smart. I don't know if that's to answer your question, my brother, but because I talk all night long. Thank you.
Let's open it up for questions and comments from the audience.
Love the film.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes.
Love all of them. And I don't, do I need a microphone? Okay.
You projected.
Thank you very much. I love the films, not having been born in Harlem, but I spent a lot of time around, and I worked with the Apollo Theater, and I worked with the Gang of Four, and just to see them again, and to hear more about Mayor Dinkins. We worked on a different film, and one of the things about Mr. Dinkins that stuck with me is he always referred to his wife as my bride.
Yes, he did.
That you never knew that, what, her name was Joyce, what? What's her name? No, you never knew her name because she was always my bride. And he was one of the gentlemen all the time, all the time. And Tevin, who knew? I worked with Tevin. He was just this strange cat who worked in audio. I had no idea what he was doing. But what was great about this film is that you humanize everyone. What was great about it, to get another side, not the new side, not the one that the other people do, but what resonates with us as supporters of, as beneficiaries of, and each of them brought something to all of us. So I love that. You know, that's my big.
Yeah.
You know that. So these were great. These were great films that need to be seen more everywhere and more often.
Thank you. As we're planning next, I also, for this series, Amy, thanks so much for your hard work. And talk about Legend in the House, our executive producer of this series, and some of those stuff does so much. Irene Gandy, come on, man.
People may or may not know, I do produce Broadway shows, and the only, speaking of community, so Rosa and Morgan and your dad, the only Tony Awards for the Black Broadway shows was because of Lori and Rosa. Because we brought theater people, the Black people would know about the shows unless they heard it from Lori and Rosa. I mean, they heard it from me, but I had to come up here and give them something. Give them something, and so I just want to say, in my Tony Award winning speech, I thank them. I didn't thank the Bishop Rashad, I didn't thank Albert Twin, I thank Rosa and Lloyd. Right. So,
yeah.
You're a genius and not Mike Carroll. What you see? I was like, we got to get you some work. Some paying job.
Thank you so much. And we were talking, I leaned over for those of us that were at Woody King's Memorial. The sister DK was in that film. There was only a couple of musical performances doing that, and DK was one of those performances. She brought it down. Her and about DK. Isn't she amazing? Amazing vocalist. For me, in terms of approaching filmmaking, I always want to kind of approach it by saying, what is the story about? Not just what happens. And so whether it's a scripted film or whether it's documentary, and for this one, it was about where does this music come from, right? Who are these people and their camaraderie? And so as we were filming it, that's what we were trying to capture so that you could really feel it in the studio with them. We wanted you to be there and feel like you were one of the band members or one of the friends and just doing that. And so the story thread and the weaving into the music, we hope that we did that to kind of make you lean in, but also to build those stories, since they have been making music all of their lives, is so connected to who they are as people and as Black folks and where they come from and our struggles in our lives and what the music means. And so, it's good. You can feel like the living stories when they had little eat or crammed into a car, or when Tevin was spacing out and couldn't even figure out what to order. That's the approach. And for all the other films, Like, what is it about? Once upon a time, you know, there is those rivers, there was the Lloyd Williams, there was the David Jenkins, but what are they about? You know, what is it from? And our ending of the David Jenkins film tried to kind of capture that dry sense of humor. I think you a joke. You got to know me a bit, but you were going to get that joke. And even though you knew what was coming, you would have to laugh. Yeah, because it speaks perfectly about who he is. And by the way, who's dry. Couple more comments before we close? Questions? Over here, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is, no, that's not me. My name is Dominique. I just wanted to say thank you for this. Just being in this room, it's kind of a bit of a full circle. Because previously, last year, I was able to do a project with the Apollo for the opening of Victoria. Also, Mr. Joseph, you probably don't know, but you go to FCBC. Yes, there is. So just so happens, you might not remember, but there was one day that Pastor Mike called everybody down to downstairs, and we did men's prayer. And literally right after that, you probably don't remember Holy Color. So it was just so not even recognized. It was just like just being in there, you just with people, like, and you was not recognizing. I was like, this is a whole human being that got some things going on. But all in all, I just wanted to say thank you for this. The reason I wanted to say thank you is because I feel the and what I mean by that is that there's a lot of information, especially in this new age. There's a lot of fast information, but I think being able to connect with it, being that we are in the old generation, there's a lot of things that I would like to learn from. Just people in here as this entirety. So I wanted to know what is the best way to get involved with being able to connect with everyone, and because again, being able to see the history of the place that I've been here for 34 years. Like I was born here, I was raised here, I still live here. You don't really hear about those things about. And I've been looking for that history of being able just to grow as a musician, because I am composing the sound designer, but just as a online in itself.
So in New Heritage, we have workshops and programs, and the networking is very important for metric. So we'll exchange information and keep you posted. The young people with Impact Repertory Theater, those grown up in the program, we now impact. That one program that Rosa told me know about is going to celebrate our 30th anniversary as a division of Heritage. Dedicating to global impact, we're getting it into the ages, because we emphasize going to college, being an activist, giving back to whatever community you're in. We now have generations of young people. Impact generation is, 3 years, 5 years, it's late when they go off to college. College degrees, graduate degrees, we have a doctorate of divinity, a doctoral candidate. The one young man who's raised in the project by his grandmother, who just got his PhD in education from Harvard. The program you saw in the film is joined Impact at 13 years old. She's a member of the chamber on their board. She's the artistic director of the Impact program. So we'll exchange information. Roderick and I and Mike, we always have young people shadow us when we're filming. From that is to young people in the program, and not specifically Impact come on perform on themselves. Become filmmakers. We have a free writing lab that we do once a year. A few of the writers who came through our New Heritage Writing Lab are working professionally. Some of them went to Columbia University to the film program where I've been a professor for 29 years, and they're working in film and television professionally. So for us, that circle of mentorship, but not just passing on, I mean, you really hit on what it's about. It's not just passing on the information and the skills of the networking, but the history and instilling new heritage, right? It incorporates the idea, as Rosa points out, keeping the heritage alive for what's new. What's new is not just the word, but what's new is that generation that we know is so we have an impact, that we are not the leaders, we're not the leaders of tomorrow, we are the leaders of today.
And piggyback. I have worked for or volunteered for the member of a number of not-for-profits throughout my life. Civil rights, arts and culture, and every not-for-profit that I've ever been connected to has had its own problems and its own challenges. But there's one challenge that I've never seen happen. I've never heard anyone be like, man, too many people want to volunteer. Man, we have to turn so many people away. Why do they keep coming to volunteer? I've never had that as a problem. But the people at these organizations, whether it's New Heritage, Harlem Week, or you name it, they're generally there because they want to make a difference. They want to make change, and they're looking for people like you to be like, okay, this work is worthwhile because somebody else wants to learn from and pass on what we're doing. So if you're looking for the opportunity to learn, each and every one of there's not an organization in Harlem or elsewhere that's a not-for-profit that's going to turn you down. Now, some of them are going to be like, he's here today, he's going to be here next week, he was here this week too, is he going to be here next month? They'll wait to see, are you serious? But the moment they realize you are, the sky's the limit. And again, we just saw Bosa's movie where he was sweeping floors and doing all that, but now he's in charge of New Heritage Theater. Like, once Roger saw he was serious, the opportunity presented itself, and so did the knowledge.
Thank you guys for planting the seed. What my artist brain always looks at is how to elevate this to another place, because those in this room would come anyway because we have, like you said, that interest. When you said, young man, what you did about that, the pride and joy of the culture, the community, this geographic map, I think in terms of how technology can also push the needle forward, pushing out films like this, but also Black Studies community service. Because what happens is always the same people show up in these rooms. In order to branch out and do it broader than that, it's using some part of technology and strategizing in terms of how to market and land it in these other spaces. So I watched the films tonight, and as I was sitting here thinking about some of the stories that I had never heard and some I had, what really started resonating for me was how to strategically map where to place it in other spaces, because there's Harlem all over the world, not just here. And so sometimes other people in other places validate what we do here, making it harder for those who are here to value it. So the full circle is really talking about how to strategically plan, which is done with these movies. So archiving is not just sitting on a shelf, but it's actually having movement.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yeah. One more. We have a really dynamic member of the New Heritage family who was looking for kind of information and answers, and came by our office one day and just started reading books, and now is helping us with strategic planning, doing so much, but it was that kind of same hunger and interest, from a background that included, entertainment and working in CAA. Rick, Rick, come on, let's. Yeah.
Well, I was leaving corporate America. I'm from Los Angeles, and I needed a break from the trauma that I felt in Hollywood. And I stumbled into Bozer Rivers' office. I was just telling Marissa how it's amazing, his daughter, and Steve, his son-in-law. I was just telling them how it's amazing to hear all these people talk about Bozer and talk about Logan. And I never got the chance to meet Logan. But I hear all these people, and then I find myself as the recipient of that same love. I walked in to read, literally I just walked in asking, can I read books on his bookshelf? And I think the first week I had to maybe read like 5 of them. And he was like, what's going on here? This guy's reading 5 books at a time. And before you know it, I'm sitting down and just a part of family. So I'm very thankful to be a part of the Heritage family and thankful to be a part of Harlem and hope to get involved with Harlem Weekend, what Ade is doing. And I'm just grateful that Boza has allowed me, little joke, I'm not really that funny, but I will say the other evening, we were at which we go to so many dinners, I don't even have to see another dinner again. But we were at dinner the other night, and someone joked, it was the head of the Urban League. They joked, she said, Barbara, she said, Britt, she goes, last year when you got here, you were at table 6. Now you're at table 1. I said, well, that's because I'm in Boza River, so I'm grateful. Thank you.
I'll share a story and then we'll close. For those of us who are mentoring and telling these stories, and we appreciate these stories. We're glad when young people come and will continue to tell the stories. And sometimes it seems like they're not listening. That can get frustrating, especially because of all the noise of social media and everything that's going on. When I came home from prison, one of my first jobs was a part-time job working at a place called Changing Seas. And it was a program helping young men, Black and Latino, who were in prison, to avoid jail time. They were on probation. So part of the things that they had to decide GED classes and how to fill out a resume and job interviews. Someone said, we want to do an arts program. And, Jamal, would you be interested? I was like, yes, you said we had that ensemble that we did in Leavenworth, so I was like, yes, working with these young men on probation, I do this theater program in Leavenworth, I'm ready, I'm built with this. I had my little curriculum, we would, do some acting, some writing, create a short play, a one-act play. At the end of the session, the parents would come, we'll have, snacks and pizza and soda, and it would be great. First workshop, and this was also back epidemic, gang epidemic, and so that's the young men that I have. It only took me about 10 minutes, maybe 15, to realize, throw your curriculum out the window. Because they were like on fire, angry, talking about who they had beef with, not only in the program, but who they would go to the Bronx and see, and I got the gap stashed over here. So I had to kind of diffuse and get them into a circle, do some breathing exercise. And sometimes, some martial arts, stretches from the training I got in the families, karate. And then we would kind of create a cycle, and that would dictate what the workshop was that particular day. We never got a chance to do the play. The program lost funding. It was the only job that I thought that I hadn't succeeded of all the things in arts and education that I had been blessed to do. About 10 years later, I'm walking down the street with Jamal and my son on a hot summer night, or that playing Power Boulevard. There's a young man about to get into a cab and sees me, and he waves the cab at him. And he goes, Mr. Joseph. He said, you don't remember me. But I was one of those knucklehead kids in that program, changing scenes. And so I defaulted to mentor mode. No, you weren't a knucklehead. It's just, he said, no, Mr. Joseph, I was a straight up knucklehead. He said, but every week you would come in and give us something positive. And I wasn't trying to hear it. He said, but 2 years later, it kicked in. Here's why I'm glad that I'm seeing you now. I'm a graduate man. I'm a social worker man. I'm a father man. Thank you. You share your history, especially your struggle, how you overcome. Keep seeking out the knowledge, sit with those elders and just go, what was your life like? How did you come to be what you were? And whatever form it is, whether it's the oral history, your oral histories, a little bit of music, a little bit of theater, a little bit of poetry, keep telling our stories, keep telling those stories.
I wanted to say 3 things, and I'm going to go through them fast, and then I'll spend more night. First, I would be remiss if I did not remind y'all that at 10 o'clock tonight on WBAI, our radio show is coming on, Harlem Connection.
Yeah.
That show is, I think it's a good show. But more importantly, I think we often take Harlem and New York City for granted. It's such an amazing place, and we often take it for granted. There's so many people here who, you ask people, have you ever been to the top of the Empire State Building? Most folks' hands don't go up, and the hands that do are people who are relatively new to New York. We've got so much greatness in our own community. The show is celebrating that, but doing it musically. It's on a not-for-profit station. I hope folks will tune in. So that's soon, 10 o'clock. WBAI, 99.5 WBAI. Secondly, Harlem Week is, we are working diligently, and I believe that Dad and Boza and everyone is going to be really, really proud of what we're doing. It's going to be August 1st to the 16th. Please visit harlemweek.org, and we will be kind of teasing and trickling as more and more contracts get signed and such, but I feel like we're moving in the right direction. I think we're going to make everyone really proud, but the point of it is to have it be something that reflects this community and y'all. And lastly, both of y'all triggered my last kind of mentor story. Percy Sutton came up a number of times in this, and I adored Percy Sutton. From the time I was a little kid, I didn't know what he did. He was the guy who worked across the hall from Dad, but he was just such a remarkable and kind man. And as a child, you notice when people actually take a genuine interest in you, and I really appreciated Mr. Sutton. But I got to be an adult, and I remember at Aaron Davis Hall, we were chit-chatting, and he looked at me and he said, "Ade, you are one class act." And I thought he was joking. But I don't know why he thought it meant so much to me. I was like, I don't know why he thinks that. I don't want him to find out I'm not. So I tried to carry myself in a way that he would want me to. And sometimes you gotta just talk to people in a way that even if they're not quite where they wanna be, you let them know you see something in them. It's almost going back to what I said about Dad, that Dad saw potential. Anyone can see the problem. There's something wrong with all of us. But there's also something good about all of us. And you just take a moment to just fuel that fire. You don't know where it's going to take you. So that is my encouragement that I hope other people do.
And that is a great place to thank you, Ade. You are coming out. Have a great rest of the evening.
Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, we do have to leave this beautiful space. If
you could make your way, I know it's just not. Thank you.
Whoa.